Hi, I'm Debbie Georgatos. Welcome to my show, America, Can We Talk? Today, we're going to talk about more coronavirus stimulus money. GOP tells Trump no. Virus-driven police state in America. And Plan on America defeating the coronavirus. And of course, I'll tell you why these stories matter to you. Stay tuned.
Debbie Georgatos, host of America Can We Talk, is an author, attorney, and political analyst whose mission is to inspire the American political conversation about preserving liberty in the best country on earth. America Can We Talk is sponsored by GC Works, a Dallas-based company performing advanced technology research in the oil and gas industry.
Can we talk into today's first five? I'm Debbie Georgatos. We just finished talking about the massive stimulus bill passed by the House and the Senate and signed by President Trump, $2.2 trillion. And of course, we talked about many of the wasteful items in there, or at least items completely unrelated to the coronavirus emergency in our country, including money to things like Corporation for Public Broadcasting, Kennedy Center, all sorts of just completely irrelevant things irrelevant to the coronavirus. That bill no longer, the ink was barely dry in President Trump's signature, as they say, and there's another bill being cooked up inside Congress, another spending bill. The odd thing to keep in mind is all of this spending is to rescue America from the damage to the economy posed by the coronavirus, but it's not really the coronavirus that has damaged the economy. It is the government's reaction to the coronavirus that has damaged the economy. It is the government shutdown of non-essential businesses, of people's lives. And so you have business shutdown. You have millions of Americans who are making claims for unemployment because they don't have a paycheck that they need. So the government created the problem that hurt the economy. Now the government is spending money by passing bills to give people money to make up for the damage that they caused. And the only money the government has, as we've said many times in the show, it's important to tell people because some people still don't know this, the government has no money. The government never has had any money. Government does not earn money. Every time the government promises to pay money, they're saying, don't worry, citizens of America, we're going to tax your wealthy friends, tax corporations, take their money away or give it to you. Or put another way, they're just giving you back your own money. That's all the government ever can do is give you back your own money. So we had a massive expenditure, a massive bill, $2.2 trillion, that was to deal with the damage to the economy. The government's paying to deal with the damage to the economy they caused. And then on top of that, you have now in Washington discussion about the next bill. So this will be the fourth bill that should or may come out of Congress or is intended to come out of Congress related to coronavirus. Well, the good news was that some members of the U.S. House, now you're not surprised, I'm sure, to understand, Republican members of the U.S. House sent a letter to President Trump. And honest to goodness, folks, in many media outlets, you saw no coverage of this, no coverage at all, unless the coverage is about just predicting and prognosticating disaster and death and suffering and ruin. It holds no interest to the media. But I want to tell you about this. First of all, one of the people who orchestrated it inside Congress is Congressman Andy Biggs from Arizona. This is what they did. They sent a letter to President Trump, a brilliant letter spelling out to President Trump the basic notion that we don't even know yet what impact the last bill we just passed will have. We don't even know if the previous $2.2 trillion bill, the money isn't even spent yet. We don't even know how it's going to help people. We don't know where the economy is going to be in a few weeks. Let's not do this. Hold off. The basic gist of their letter to President Trump was hold off until we see the impact on the economy that will flow from and it's called the CARES Act, CARES is the acronym used for the $2.2 trillion bill. But the letter was signed, as I say, Congressman Andy Biggs spearheaded it. Numerous conservatives in Washington backed it. And they are actually urging him to stand against additional requests already being circulated for a rushed fourth and even fifth phase of relief. Most of the relief funding from phase 2 and phase 3, the letter points out to President Trump, has not even been distributed yet. So this is monopoly money to start with. We're already massively in debt. We're just printing money. It's like printing monopoly money. And they're saying, hold off. Let's see how we do. So the letter is really brilliant. I won't read it to you, but you can read it on our website, americacanwetalk.org. On the homepage, under shows, drop down list of links. Read the letter yourself. And consider, if you like a little bit of activism during this time that you're stuck at home, consider sending an email or making a phone call to the offices of all of these individual members of Congress. Consider saying thank you for speaking up for fiscal sanity. Thank you for not letting the Democrats further exploit this coronavirus crisis. The people who signed it, I can't read all of them. There are 22 members of Congress who signed it. I mentioned Andy Biggs. I must, of course, have mentioned Chip Roy, fabulous congressman from the great state of Texas, a leading conservative in Congress, even though he's only in his first term, who's been on the show before, of course. Ron Wright been on the show before. He signed it. Jody Heiss, I believe we have him coming up next week. Louis Gohmert, been on the show before. The serious conservatives in Congress, Jim Jordan, of course, naturally Ken Buck, jumped to sign this. The point of my first 5 today is commend it, not just because they're making a brilliant and yet common sense point, but because in the era of virus shaming, to use the expression that we heard from Dr. Everett Piper a couple of days ago on my show, we are seeing people in Congress willing to challenge the hysterical reaction to the coronavirus in our country, even though you have to know it will bring them wrath, ridicule from the Democrat media mob, the Democrats in Washington, the media that just dutifully reports everything the Democrats want them to say. The Democrat media mob will attack everyone who dares to say, we're spending kind of crazy here. We're spending more than we have. We don't even have enough money to be doing this. So it was brave and bold for them to send this letter to President Trump. Plus, it gives President Trump a little bit of leeway, a little bit of room to say, you know what? Not everyone's on board with this. We have the people, the 22 members of Congress who signed this, represent districts around this country who are actually very concerned about this bonanza of spending in Washington over the coronavirus. And we don't even know yet how long it will be a huge problem. We don't know how long this shutdown will last. In fact, people advocating for this spending are probably people who intend to have this coronavirus disaster unfolding in our country and intend to have the police state tactics being engaged in by our country, intend to have those in place as long as they possibly can. People who expect the virus, the shutdown, the police state actions in our country to last for months and months, of course they think we better pass another spending bill because they're not going to let people work for months and months and months. This, my friends, as I've been talking about in the show, must be something more people speak up for and say, we cannot agree to the shutdown of the American economy, the indefinite shutdown of the American economy. We, the people, need to be the ones standing up. We need to help our leaders lead. We need to be the leaders, telling our elected officials, we know you're the leaders, you need to follow our lead. We're telling you to let America work again. Speaking of which, I have a petition called Let America Work Again. It is at my website, americacanwetalk.org, or you can just go on and at that site, americacanwetalk.org, in the top left of the blog portion, it says sign a petition. You click on that, it gives you a link to the petition. So if you want Americans to get back to work, I urge you to go there and sign that petition. The entire purpose is not to dictate exactly the terms, the dates, the precise method we'll use is to send the message of President Trump. The American people are with you. We agree. We want to go back to work. And that, my friends, is today's First Five. So I want to talk today, I use the expression, the virus-driven police state in America. And I understand that the term police state is, to many people, people might say it's kind of hyperbolic. It's a hyperbole, it's an exaggeration. We're not really a police state. We're just trying to take care. We're just trying to deal with this very alarming virus. But there are many aspects, and I chose the term, I always carefully choose my words. I chose the term police state for a reason, because I want people to become alarmed by how much power the government is gathering to itself because of the virus and their reaction to the virus. To start with, as I mentioned, the First Five, the just collectivization of power in Washington in response to the virus is a form of at least growing government control over society. When you have members of Congress already spending money we don't have to bridge over the downtime caused to workers because of government action, and you have them spending money we don't have, it isn't even all spent yet, and the next bill is coming, say the Democrats, and the next bill is coming, there is just it's a mindset that says, we in Washington, we take charge, we centralize power, we control things, we decide how things are going to be handled, and the American people, what your job is to write checks to the IRS and to your state agencies and to do what you're told about the environment, about this crisis of the coronavirus. But I want to tell you, when I use the word police state, I'm just going to run through some stories that are actually happening in America. All these stories to remind you, Washington, D.C., Fauci and Trump, they have not been the source of mandates in place around the country. Those so far have been put in place, mandates that say shelter in place, all unessential businesses closed, no gathering of people of 10 or more, groups of 10 or more, no leaving your house except if it's an essential purpose, so you can't be outside without permission of the government. All of that is coming from local officials, governors, mayors, county councils, city councils, county commissioners' courts. It's coming from local government, not from Washington. But those local government people are, in fact, responding to the tone being set in Washington, which in turn is being set by the models that many people are beginning to question more and more, the models that predict just astonishing disaster to America, which necessitate just shutting America down. But let me just run through, I tell you, police state, as I say, I don't use that term lightly. In the state of Florida, a woman was out for a run in her small town. Her small town in Florida was called Stuart. It's a quaint Florida coastal town. In the town of Stuart in Florida, she's out for a jog. Got pulled over by 3 police officers, picked up and detained, because she was detained under suspicion of being outside while infected with coronavirus. Well, she doesn't have coronavirus. She had earlier in the week not been feeling well, but they weren't coronavirus symptoms. They were, upset stomach, things that sound more like a stomach flu of some kind. She didn't have coronavirus symptoms. She ultimately did get tested, doesn't have coronavirus. But she was out jogging, not with a group of people, not in the middle of a crowd, outside in her town, pulled over by 3 police officers and detained, ended up having the coronavirus test done. One of the drive-through, you can do drive-through testing. They unfortunately have to use a Q-tip, a lengthy Q-tip to get a swab out of your nose. That's what they test. That's what they did to her, doesn't have the virus. She said that the police acknowledged that the reason she was pulled over is because some shop owner in her small town saw her out jogging and thought from something he'd read on Facebook, maybe she had coronavirus. She says she can tell you exactly, she doesn't say his name, but she said, I can tell you exactly who it is. It's a restaurant owner who keeps asking me out and is mad because I keep saying no thank you. So you have the police who could have responded to the shop owner by saying, She's allowed to be out jogging here. She's not with anybody. She's not in within 6 feet of anybody. And we don't just go hunting people down based on the suspicion of other people that maybe they have the virus. So her story, she ends up obviously not being charged. She says 4 to 5 police officers surrounded her in historic downtown Stewart. This is this past Thursday after business owners spotted her in the street and called 911. So that is one example of absurd police state. Police can't say to this restaurant owner, hey, buddy, you know what? We don't have to pull somebody over just because you think she might have coronavirus. I'm going to give you another story out of the state of Maine. And this is a good story in which the point is that people are speaking up. People are resisting this kind of mandated shelter in place. Don't you dare leave your home without permission of the government. The governor of the state of Maine, Governor Mills, had issued an order, essentially stay at home, and urging the sheriff's departments to pull people over to ask them why they're out. If you're only supposed to leave your home for essential reasons, and so in Texas, I can tell you essential means grocery store, doctor's appointment, or to pick up a medication. So in Maine, you're not supposed to be out. So this Maine's governor put out an instruction to the sheriff's department saying, you know what, pull people over. Even if they've done nothing wrong, just pull them over to ask them, why are you out? And then you, sheriff's department, you get to decide whether what they tell you fits in our description of essential. So a written statement issued by one of the sheriffs in Maine, Sheriff Nichols, Scott Nichols, one of the 16 county sheriffs in the state of Maine, said, we will not be setting up a police state. We will not be setting up a police state, period. He said he will not purposefully go out and stop vehicles just because they're on the road and stop and ask people who are out and about. He says to do so, number one, puts officers at risk. And number two, it's too much like Nazi Germany and Soviet Russia, that the authorities have the right to stop you just to say, why are you out? Where are you going? What are you doing? I mean, it gets to, well, where are your papers? Who do you think you are? I love this spirit from this sheriff. And I mentioned something in the show a couple of days ago. I want to mention again about constitutional rights. No constitutional rights are absolute. I mean, none. They all have, you can't fire in a crowded theater. You can't, all the things everybody knows. But you do have in this country, from the Declaration of Independence, the whole concept that we have the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. We have the right to live our lives, live them, not just, stay in place when you're told. Now, again, a short-term emergency, tornado is coming, shelter in place, get in someplace safe in your home. Hurricane is coming, stay off the roads. We have flooding in the roads. But a long-term, indeterminate, and when I say indeterminate, no determined end in sight for many of these orders infringes on the right of people to live out their rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If you're being told you can never leave your home again, if there is some order in place related to a future possible contraction or the spreading of some virus, whether it's coronavirus or something else, you are surrendering your life and liberty and your pursuit of happiness. You're being forced to surrender your liberty. And think also about this fact. The coronavirus orders, the coronavirus problem in America, which is leading to COVID-19, and we do have people suffering, this entire thing is not a hoax. The government reaction is extreme and is being used to repress freedom. So it's not a hoax. The coronavirus is real. COVID-19 is real, suffering is real, shortages in some particular places in this country are real, but the damage to our liberty is also a real concern. And a lot of the rules in place in this country, including where I live, Dallas County, a lot of the rules in place right now are not based on actual danger of the coronavirus. They're based on models predicting future danger of a virus, models predicting future potential danger, future possible shortages. It was the justification in Dallas County. The reason that they said they can issue shelter in place and all businesses closed was the idea that if you look at some models, the projections said they wouldn't have sufficient ICU beds. They wouldn't have sufficient hospital rooms. We might run out of supplies. And so because of models, which in the case of Dallas County and many other places around this country have turned out to be drastically exaggerated, models drastically exaggerated, said much more damage and danger was coming than actually was. Yet we're being told these orders to shelter in place are justified by models. And so you surrender your liberty and you wait for the government to tell you when you can leave your home again. Compound that with Dr. Fauci has already told America, A, he expects that the virus will be back in the fall. It may mutate. It may become a seasonal virus. So year after year after year, we'll deal with coronavirus flu season like we deal with swine flu season and other flus season. And so we have to ask ourselves in this initial phase, we all went along early on, or pretty much everyone went along early on with the idea of you have to honor what the government's asking us to do to spread what we thought was going to be the rapid, fearful spread of the coronavirus. But if the standard of liberty we're now being asked to accept is whenever the government says a virus looks like it might be coming here, or models tell us that a virus we have in our midst or headed our way might turn out to involve very high numbers of people getting sick, we can take away your liberty and you can't do a thing about it. We can shut down your business, shut down your income, shut down your home, shut down everything. You will stay in place until you're told. So this is the kind of thing, back to our story about this happy sheriff in Maine saying, no, we're not going to go along with stopping people who are just out in their car, otherwise committing no offense. They didn't run a stop sign. They're not driving drunk. They didn't speed. We're not going to stop them just to say, where are you going? Do you have a sufficient reason to be out of your home? A legitimate reason. And he actually said, he talked about the idea that they'll try to educate people first, and they want people to understand what the rules are. But he said, he's not willing to set up a police state in his county in the state of Maine. So that was one example, and a sheriff. And by the way, sheriffs, we talked about this years ago in the show, but sheriffs have kind of a unique place. I can't get off on it today. A unique place in our constitutional structure of this country. This guy is saying, yeah, I'm actually going to enforce that. Next little case. We're on the cases of my point that we're becoming a police state, and we better be alert to it and stand up to it. A paddleboarder. Now, if you ever paddleboarded, I have, and paddleboarding is just you're standing up in this paddle out in a bay or the ocean or wherever you are, and you're standing up and you're paddling along. You're going like 0 miles an hour. You're barely moving, and there's no one around you, and you're far from the shore. There's no one around you. A single paddleboarder was arrested, chased by a boat, and arrested in Malibu for being out during the coronavirus closures. So this guy was on his paddleboard in Malibu, which sounds lovely, by the way. I'm sure it was a lovely day, and he was enjoying being out. A lifeguard ordered him to get out of the ocean. He was near the Malibu pier. He did not do that. He kept paddleboarding around. They actually had county lifeguards patrolling the shore by boat, trying to get the man to come ashore. Despite repeated orders to exit the water, he continued paddleboarding for 30 minutes. Lifeguards eventually flagged down Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputies who responded by boat to help. So according to the Sheriff's Department, you can see a video of this incident, bystanders staying there watching, and eventually bystanders videoing it and putting it up on social media. But he was arrested on suspicion of disobeying a lifeguard and violating Governor Gavin Newsom's stay-at-home order. I mean, seriously, the Los Angeles Police Department couldn't think of anything else to do with their time than track down a single paddleboarder who's out there by himself. Now, I want to run through a bunch of other examples, even more flaming absurd. And then I'll make 2 more points about this, but after the other examples. And I do want to have you keep in mind that these are just early on. These are examples early on in America's experience with a very, very draconian orders in place around our country, that we have people who are just experiencing what they really haven't in America before, which is this kind of, America with a police force in place, believing it's their job to stop you wherever you are and ask you what you're doing. But here's some other examples of things that were shut down because of the where we are in this country in terms of the coronavirus. So this past Saturday in Kansas City, police in Kansas City intervened to shut down a parade of elementary school teachers. Elementary school teachers. The staff of some elementary school decided to organize a parade as a way to boost the morale of their students and encourage them in this new distance learning adventure. All of the teachers involved in the parade, all of the teachers and administrators were in their own cars. So you're in your own car, you're necessarily 6 feet from the next car. I mean, you can't, you're not going to be that close to someone if you're out in your car. So the teachers in their cars, no chance whatsoever of, transmission in that distance. But a spokeswoman for the police later explained that they had to break up, tell the teachers they could not do this parade to inspire their young students to learn about this social distancing thing and deal with their new normal, which we're never going to accept. It descended upon because the celebration of learning was not necessary or essential. There you go, not necessary or essential. Police in Malibu, we just talked about that one, caught a paddle boarder in the ocean, requiring 2 boats, 3 additional deputies and vehicles called to the scene for a, guy paddleboarding. You had not far away San Diego Sheriff's Department giving out citations to people who committed the crime of wanting to watch the sunset on the beach. I can tell you, my husband and I, with our 3 kids, we lived in San Diego many years. It is one of the best places in the world to go and watch the sun over the ocean. I mean, it's beautiful, beautiful to watch sunsets in California. So if you're 6 or 10 feet apart in the ocean, along the beach, that was not okay. These people got citations against them for watching the sunset outside. And I'm reading these, by the way, from a brilliant piece that was on Daily Wire. You can read it on my website, americacanwetalk.org. If you go to that website, our website, you can go on that homepage under shows, drop down list of links, and you can read this litany of examples. I'm not going to read all of them, but just to tell you, when I'm saying police state, I'm not kidding. These are crazy unless you think they were happening in like Cuba or Venezuela or some other repressive regime, but they're happening right here in America. Okay, in Pennsylvania, police were pulling over and ticketing a woman who, according to the citation, what she did wrong was she was going for a drive. She was out. And I guess they have a, shelter in place and only essential errands are permitted. So she was just going for a ride. But she got a citation for that. In Minnesota, 2 people ticketed for 2 offenses. One was just driving with a canceled license. Okay, you really can't do that. The other one was violating her state's stay-at-home order. So they have a stay-at-home order in Minnesota, which, by the way, Minnesota has a minuscule problem with coronavirus. What she told the police is she'd gone to Taco Bell, so that's probably permitted. You can go out and get food. But on the way home, before that, she'd visited her storage unit. And so I guess storage unit was non-essential. You can't go, whatever you're doing, visiting or putting things in your storage unit. All sorts of things. We have places now where even though Walmart can be open, as an example, Walmart or stores like that can be open because they sell essential supplies like food and medications. But now those stores are being told to only sell necessary essential items. So if you go to Walmart and you're in line and you have your bread, milk, eggs, but you picked up, I don't know, insect repellent, Band-Aids, who knows what things are not essential. Walmart's being told you can't buy those items because they're not essential. So even though the store's open and you're there anyway, you can't buy these particular items because they don't qualify as essential. A driver from New York gets caught in Florida, might face 60 days in jail. And this is for some, I don't know what he was doing. Let me tell you this. This is amazing. They have been setting up checkpoints to stop and question every car that passes through. Checkpoints, stopping every car that passes through to ask you essentially, where are you from and why are you out? And are you in violation of some order in the state in which you live? Okay, that you have, there's a whole bunch of police chief in Colorado actually said in an interview in response to questions about why are you picking on people who aren't doing anything wrong, or they're out of the house, but they're not within 6 feet of other people. They're not doing anything wrong. A police chief in Colorado explained that the act of leaving your house and going outside is not a right. It's actually a privilege that can be provoked it can be revoked if it is misused. So the right to go outside your house can be revoked. Seriously. Okay. Prosecutor in Ohio, being interviewed in a radio interview, said that those who defy his state stay-at-home order are committing felonious assault. Felonious meaning as in a felony assault. If you're guilty of that, you can sit your butt in jail, sit there and kill yourself. Okay, that's very nice. A really nice prosecutor in Ohio. I want to say, I keep going back to be fair to elected officials early on. People thought we had a very dangerous situation, and we had coronavirus is going to kill us all in the next X number of days or weeks unless we did this shelter in place. But we're now into it for a while. We've been in our homes with orders in place to stay in our homes, prohibitions of businesses functioning, prohibition of any business deemed by the government non-essential, which, as a good friend of mine pointed out, everybody's business is essential to that owner. Everybody's job is essential to the person who has that job. But the government's picking and choosing who can be open and closed, not usually what we're okay with in this country. But a whole other way that we have this police state developing, beside the examples I gave you, I want to hit kind of two other points on this theme to really drive home that the response by the government to the coronavirus threat that we, the people, are permitting to develop is will become part of our history. It is shaping our future as we decide how much we'll tolerate or whether we push back as individuals and say, not okay with me, not doing that, we're going to stand up. So the two other aspects of it is that it's not just the individual examples, individual things like whether sheriffs are going to pull over people who didn't do anything wrong. It is the mindset developing in many, many people who are local officials in jurisdictions all around this country. And I'll give you an example of one. I was actually texting with a friend who's a elected official at a local level out of state, and just kind of saying, wow, things are getting pretty crazy here. And one thing he was saying in response back was, well, I'm thinking in a few more weeks, we can let a few more people go back to work. Now, this is, to be clear, in the context of a long text exchange, on and on and on and on and on. But that mindset that a local official is already embracing the idea that the local officials, will let people go back to work, that let people out of their homes without being punished or arrested or questioned or sent back home. This is the mindset that is setting in at local official levels all over this country. The idea that we'll decide and you people have no say. You citizens, you don't decide your freedom, we decide your freedom. We're going to have this coronavirus with us in this country. I'm sorry to report. I would love if somehow someone found a way to eviscerate all viruses and get them off planet Earth. Great, we have that, we're all set. But the coronavirus is enabling the kind of people who've always wanted to control other people, is giving these kind of inner Nazi, inner tyrant type leaders legitimacy in what they're doing. Legitimacy in saying, no, we'll decide because we're the ones who really understand, we're the smart ones. And then the other thing that's happening as a correlated and unfortunate thing is how much of this attitude about coronavirus and protecting ourselves, it's not just that local officials are feeling extremely emboldened and feeling empowered to control other people. I'm going to get to a moment about what happened at a meeting today here in Dallas, Dallas, it's called the County Commissioners Court. It's the highest authority in Dallas County. And they had a hearing today at which people were trying to push back a little bit and say, hey, you know what? We actually, we don't like that we're being held in place, and we don't like this. April 30th seems too long. We had business owners saying, you know what, this is killing me. I can't pay my employees. I can't keep my business open. I'm not gonna be able to pay my rent. People saying this is really hurting us. I'm going to talk to you in a moment about some of the things that were said there. But the last thing I want to say, just kind of an overarching concern, is how much it's changing the American culture, how people think about each other, how they speak with each other. We had Dr. Everett Piper on the show a couple days ago, and he was talking about that person-to-person cultural change. But I'll just give you some examples. I mentioned a week or two ago on the show about a friend of mine in the neighborhood around here in this Dallas area whose next door neighbor was out in her own front yard with her own children, own front yard, own children. My friend's neighbor, the lady across the street, called the police to say those kids are outside and they're not keeping it 3 feet apart. At that point, it was just 3 feet. They're not keeping 3 feet apart. And the police had to come and say, actually, lady, it's her yard, it's her kids, she's allowed to do that. But this tattling on each other, this reporting on each other, this is a very creepy aspect of the police state. It is among the things that many gruesome tyrants counted on throughout history, instilling fear in the people and encouraging people to turn in their neighbors. I remember, it's a funny thing, an odd little example of it. I remember years ago when we lived in San Diego, and they had a water shortage. We had a drought going on, so they had rules about which side of the street could water on whatever it was, on even days, if you're or even days of the week, people with even house number could water, whatever the rule. There's some rule about it. And then, so they're trying to stagger watering, and they're trying to encourage people not to waste water. So they had actually in the city's announcement about this, you could report your neighbor. You could call in and say, hey, Susie next door, she's watering, but it's not our day, but she's watering. Now, this kind of thing, it seems so petty. Think who would even do that? But people did. And my father-in-law, who was just it was a blessing of a father-in-law, fabulous father-in-law, and and they lived near us, and they are often over at our house visiting with our kids. And he and my mother-in-law were very close. My kids' grandparents very close with us during the years in San Diego. My father-in-law, just a tremendous student of history and of government, had said, this is really, really bad. This government urging people to turn in their neighbors over excessive watering is really, really bad. Now, my only reaction to it had been kind of like, who would waste their time to turn in their neighbor? I'm not going to do that. No one would. But he's saying, but it's encouraging people to think of their neighbors as their enemies and to think of themselves as a little bit invested with police power. I'm going to get, Susie, a neighbor, or somebody else. I'm going to, I'm going to get her turned in. And it just changes the culture of the country to have people encouraged to turn each other in. So here in Dallas County, we have our own county judge actually tweeting out, encouraging people to turn in their neighbors, their fellow business owners, people who are doing things not allowed by the orders in place in Dallas, encouraging people to report to City Hall, say, hey, did you know so-and-so is doing this? This is actually happening. And if it's happening here in Dallas County, I'm going to guess it's around the country. The idea that people encouraged to turn in your neighbor because that makes you a good citizen. And this is how and it's done with a very sanctimonious, self-righteous, you're the good guy here. You're standing up for protecting us from coronavirus. You're helping the people of this country, and you're saving us from the danger of your rotten neighbor who's doing this. It's a very insidious and ugly step away from a free society. People starting to fear their neighbors turning them in, and the government encouraging people to turn their neighbors in. And people have plenty of busybodiness. I mean, all around, I'm sure, all around the country. In fact, you can see it in social media, see it in Facebook, other postings. People endlessly, like their inner Nazi is coming to life, their inner tyrant, their inner school marm scold personality coming to light. People posting, I am so proud of myself, my family, because we are sheltering in place, and we only went to the store once this entire week, and everything else we're going to do without. And if we did it, you can too. And I can't believe I saw so and so out and about, and she was, she did this, she was at this place, she shouldn't have been there. I mean, people are this kind of rottenness in people's attitudes, judging each other, interfering with each other. These are rotten things flowing from this growing sense of overregulation and overreaction to the coronavirus pandemic. It is actually harming the culture of our country. I have periodically thought about weighing in on some of those things, and the battles aren't usually worth it on social media, because people are set in their ways, but it really is helping people get a real window on what their friends are really all about. And the school marms scold. You can, you see who's doing that. There's just the inner tyrant, inner Nazi mentality of people is coming to light. Last thing I want to mention about the Dallas Dallas County Commissioners Court, rather, they had a hearing today where people could, I had a hearing today where they could come forward and you could talk to them, weigh in your 2 cents, what you'd like to have happen. So you had a friend of mine was there, and she was telling the kind of comments that were made. And what really emerged was citizens are telling their own representative on the county commissioner's court, we can't go. I mean, the talk of 30, 60, 90 more days of shelter in place, of we can't go anywhere, of we can't have our businesses, we can't survive. We can't do that. We don't have the money to do it. We don't have the means to do it. We can't keep our business open. We can't pay for our rent. We can't do this. You've got to lift this. And you just can sense from some of the things that were said, the kind of, yeah, but we, the ruling elite, we know better. There was even an effort to try to get, because right now it's happening, the highest official in Dallas County named Clay Jenkins, he's the one calling all the shots, issuing all the edicts, issuing all the rulings. Even other people on the commissioner's court were saying, don't you think maybe we should all be part of this? Like, we should all have a meeting and all participate in discussing what's going to happen? But the pushback was, no, we don't have the time. Sometimes you have to have emergencies. We can't have a 2 or 3 hour meeting every time we have to change things. I'm telling you, people, this police state mentality is going to the heads of people who've always liked to be the little tyrant, the little in charge of everybody else. Very, very, very dangerous. And even discussion within the county commissioner's court about things like, look, if we have only 10, if the 6 feet distance is safe, if you say I'm staying 6 feet or less away from everyone, and a church is huge, and so why do we have to have the 10-person limit in the church? Because you could have more people than 10, and you could have everyone staying 6 feet apart. Why can't they do that? I mean, there were a lot of questions being discussed, but what ultimately emerged, and I don't know that there were any rulings out of today's hearing in front of the commissioner's court. I think it was more a chance to air grievances and concerns, but there was very much emerging from some people, no, actually, we need to be in charge, and we'll decide, and we'll let you know. Until then, you pretty much need to sit tight and do what we say. A dangerous trend and tendency in America. Okay, the last thing I want to hit today briefly, as before we wrap up the show today, I want to just talk about something very positive and hopeful. First of all, you see the caption for this segment is called Plan on America Defeating Coronavirus. I mean that as a verb. Plan on it. Assume it. Recognize that what you're hearing out of many people in Washington, the virus may come back year after year. It may be seasonal. It may be back this fall. The notion is that we're going to have a long-term acceptance of more and more control over our freedom in this country, because after all, the virus will come back and come back and back. Well, friends, viruses have been around since time began. Viruses have been a threat to people since time began. This one was new. We still need to understand its true source in China, understand how and why. But this virus is new. Viruses are not. When I say defeat coronavirus, I am not, I would love if someone could just eliminate it from planet Earth, but assuming that cannot happen, we need to understand that we Americans are going to defeat the idea of the coronavirus taking away our culture of liberty, taking away our robust free market economy, taking away the idea of liberty in America, because that's what the leftists in this country are talking about. So I want to commend the Heritage Foundation. We'll be talking more about this. Heritage Foundation has a new National Coronavirus Recovery Commission. Brilliantly, The Heritage Foundation has come up with the idea we have to put together a commission. They put it together already. I think it's 17 people. Yeah, 17 people, a team of people who are going to come up with a strategy, not just to, bring little segments of the economy back into working order, but the broad idea, we're going to get America back. The National Coronavirus Recovery Commission, I'm going to pursue understanding more. They just announced this. But I like first the idea that the assumption is, the given is, we're going to recover. We're going to have America back. And secondly, that we need to do great thought, immerse ourselves in deep and conscientious and important thought about how has America been harmed by the virus, not just the most unfortunate infection rates and the deeply tragic deaths, but how as a whole has America been harmed by this virus, our economy, our culture, our presumptions about the power of the state, all those things need to be looked at as we move forward to recovering. And last thing I want to say is a positive note to play on ending our discussion about coronavirus for today has to do with a governor in the state of South Dakota. Her name is Kristi Noem. Kristi Noem, she in her state, one of the few states that does not have in place a coronavirus shelter in place, can't leave your home without permission rule. She gave a little speech. I want to play a segment of that speech. Matt the Wonderful has it. But this is a governor of South Dakota, a woman Republican governor, explaining why she's not going to go along with this shelter in place order, given the unique factors of her state and how her state is doing under this virus. Here is Governor Kristi Noem.
I wanted to touch on the role of government in a crisis situation. In this country and in our state, we have a government that is run by, for, and of the people. And the people have established national and state constitutions that place specific limits on the role of government in our lives. Those limits prevent us from taking draconian measures, much like the Chinese government has done and what we have seen. There also is some limits that keep us from taking some of the actions we've seen European governments take that limit citizens' rights. Our Constitution ensures the citizen's right is protected. I agree with the role of the government as set forth in our state and in our national Constitution. I took an oath to uphold these constitutions. My role in respect to public safety is something that I take very seriously. The people themselves are primarily responsible for their safety. They are the ones that are entrusted with expansive freedoms. They're free to exercise their rights to work, to worship, and to play, or to even stay home, or to conduct social distancing. Since the middle of February, I've been very clear that people need to take personal responsibility for their health and the well-being of their families. They should be practicing good hygiene. They should be washing their hands, practicing social distancing to make sure that we are stopping the spread of this virus in our state. Other than a select few, the work that the people of South Dakota have been doing has been tremendous and has been incredibly effective. We have been able to bend the curve a great deal. We have been able to make sure that we're keeping our hospital capacity at a manageable level, and we are continuing to push our peak day farther and farther out into the future. We have to remember that our objective here is not to stop the spread of this virus in the state of South Dakota. The science tells us that that is not possible. We cannot stop it. What we're trying to do is to slow the spread. We're trying to flatten the curve, and we're trying to make sure that our people and that our healthcare system are not overwhelmed. South Dakota is not New York City, and our sense of personal responsibility, our resiliency, and our already sparse population density put us in a great position to manage the spread of this virus without needing to resort to some of the measures that we've seen in some of these major cities, coastal cities, and in other countries. My team has put in some thoughtful, strategic, some guided measures by using science and facts and data to what is happening right here on the ground in South Dakota. The calls to apply for a one-size-fits-all approach to this problem in South Dakota is herd mentality. It's not leadership. My responsibility is to respect the rights of people and the people who elected me. to manage our state operations in a way that reflects the realities of what we have here on the ground in our state. On the foundation of my principles, common sense conservative values, and the principles that we hold dear in America, the facts, the science, and the data will guide our decision making here in South Dakota.
Honest to goodness, that woman is articulating what I wish we would be hearing more from more and more governors around this country and other leaders, which is she's finding solutions unique to her state. She's getting tremendous pressure from Dr. Fauci and other people in Washington. Why doesn't the entire country do shelter in place? I so respect that woman's thinking, her commitment to the constitutional principles, and her application of those principles to her state. So I just want to commend her and say, you know, they are doing great up there. And I hope we have more and more individual leaders, governors of states, county commissioners, mayors, city councils, continuing to not go along with the herd mentality, but to really apply the facts on the ground and to get better data, correct data, but apply the facts on the ground to their constituents with the overarching notion that it is truly, at the end of the day, the personal responsibility of each individual to care for himself. And it is the role of government to, so far as practical, protect individual liberty. At the end of every show, as I always do, I want to turn and tell you why the stories we talked about today matter to you. To start with, our first story today, we talked about the more COVID-19 stimulus, and GOP says to Trump, no. President Trump is stepping up in this crisis. He deserves credit for leading like a CEO, but he isn't anchored in any ideology, which can lead to mistakes and excesses. And I mean that as no insult to him. Love President Trump, grateful for him, but I will say, you know, he is, I think he doesn't have the ideological rooting of a true economic fiscal conservative. The $2 trillion rescue package already signed into law is an amount of money not even remotely fathomable by the vast majority of Americans, and not by politicians either. It has not even begun to make its way through the economy. We're not even close to understanding the enormous added fiscal precariousness it has created. Now is no time for more fictional spending from money created by printing presses. Now is the time to get the economy restarted. There is no higher priority. Thanks to GOP leaders for standing against more reckless stimulus spending. And we talked about today the police state arresting a lone paddleboarder, shutting down a makeshift parade of single cars, issuing citations for watching the sunset in violation of stay-at-home orders, ordering limits for no more than 2 persons in a car. There's another, we didn't even get to that. The act of leaving your house and going outside is not a right, but a privilege, according to a Colorado sheriff. All these have happened in the United States of America in the last 30 days. This must not continue. Americans must rise and assert their freedoms. And finally, on Plan on America Defeating Coronavirus, I want to implant that and encourage you as our listeners to think of that as the way you think about, we're going to get through this. We're going to diminish the number of cases. We're going to move forward and restore our country of liberty. The Heritage Foundation is moving in the right direction. The National Coronavirus Recovery Commission, South Dakota's Governor Kristi Noem is leading in the right direction. The people themselves are primarily responsible for their safety. They're the ones that are entrusted with expansive freedoms. They're free to exercise their rights to work, worship, and play, or to stay at home. Kudos to both. These are the attitudes of Americans. We have not surrendered our heritage and our country to COVID-19. We, the people, must save the country. Too many politicians play it safe, choose to shut down the economy and freedom out of fear of media and leftist attacks. Tell the government we Americans still want our freedom. The last closing point I'll say today in America Can We Talk, I have a petition to urge the the White House to let Americans work again. It's a petition on the White House petition website. It's intended to support and encourage President Trump's I know he has them from things he said. He wants to get America back to work. The spirit of this petition is to let the president and the White House know America supports his mission and desire to get Americans back to work. You can find that petition on my website, americacanwetalk.org. Under the blog portion of the very front page, you click on Sign the Petition, and in the article, it takes you right to the link. If any of you cannot find that link, I've had people emailing me kind of all night last night, emailing about how can I find your petition. If you can't get to how to click on it, please email me at americacanwetalk@gmail.com and click on that petition and sign it so you can join the voices telling President Trump, we agree with you, we want to get America back to work. I also want to urge you at my website to subscribe to our newsletter. If you go to americacanwetalk.org, click on subscribe, and you will be on the list for the once a week email I do on Fridays, linking to the interviews and shows over the past week. You can subscribe. I'd love to have you do that. Love to email you once a week. I also, on whatever social media you're on, I ask for your support for this show, to share, to tell your friends about it, to follow me on Twitter, to subscribe on YouTube, all the ways, you know what they are, all the ways you can support this show. This show is growing, and I'm grateful for every single listener, for the messages you send, the emails you send, the encouragement. I appreciate all of it very, very much. I'm Debbie Georgatos, and this is America Can We Talk, where every Monday through Thursday at 3 p.m. Central Time, I talk truth about America because America matters. And I'll talk to you next time.
America, Can We Talk? Truth about America.
Can you